So our theme this month has been, and good includes prosperity. Today my topic is spiritual gifts. Many of you are familiar with the quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson, "You were born to be rich and inevitably grow rich by the use of your faculties." So here's the question for those of us who have been pondering this all month now. How's that working for you? How are you using your spiritual gifts in the unfolding of your life? Personally, I believe that living the science of mind is the greatest spiritual gift that any of us can use. So again, I ask you, how are you using your spiritual gifts in the unfolding of your life? And when I talk about the philosophy of the science of mind, our class in From Whence We Came, which is the visiting and revisiting of how our philosophy came about, we've been using one of the books from this trilogy called the Ernest Holmes Papers. And the book that we're using is titled The Philosophy of Ernest Holmes. And it's a fascinating experience for us because we all have his textbook and many of the other books that he wrote, but he didn't write this. It's titled The Philosophy of the Science of Mind, and he didn't write it. It's actually a compendium of notes, of talks, of workshops that he did once he began putting this philosophy out into what he would call the ethers, but putting it out into the world. And these were contained in files in his home, and he shared those files with a man by the name of George Bendall, who then took them and put them into book form. So it's very different from reading the texts that we use, because these are his thoughts, his musings, you might call them, his ideas that he's testing. And one of the things that we've learned from this, talk about prosperity, is the work that Ernest Holmes did looking at other spiritual beliefs, other philosophies, going clear back into BCE, before the Common Era, and looking at the writings and the teachings of individuals who were recognized for their spiritual knowledge and expression, including but not limited to the Bible as we know it today, because there are variations there to be considered, such as the Gnostic Gospels, such as the Dead Sea Scrolls. There's such a rich history in spiritual and philosophical knowing, which sometimes we find exceeds what we are practicing now. So Holmes was an incredible student and a prolific reader. He also was a poet. And so much of what he has thought about and brought together, he has put into verse, which was published in a book called The Voice Celestial later on in his life. And it's an epic poem. It's incredibly big. It's like yay thick. That's quite a poem. But in any event, there is such an opportunity for prosperous learning in these teachings, whether you're a religious scientist or anyone else. In fact, I was having a conversation earlier today with someone who said, wow, you could use this as a part of the story of the history of religions of the world, something which Houston Smith did a number of years ago and touched briefly on this. There's another book, if you have an interest in it, called Spirits in Rebellion. And Spirits in Rebellion is the tracing of New Thought work in the United States from about the mid-1700s up through what we would know as the 20th century. So it's not just that we focus on a very narrow spiritual background when we talk about prosperity, or we talk about health, or we talk about creativity, or we talk about relationships. We have all of this magnificent information to draw upon, to sort through, although Dr. Holmes did a lot of the sorting for us, and we're blessed for that, to let go of that which doesn't serve us and to maximize what does. So that's called bringing the past into the present. It's different than dwelling on the past and saying, oh, it can never be any better, it can never be any different, it can never be any richer, any healthier, any happier. Yes, you can. Yes, we can. Yes, we are. When we bring forward from the past what serves us in the present, and the rest of it, we acknowledge it for having brought us to this moment, we bless it for having done so, and then we release it because it no longer serves us. So, that having been said, that in and of itself is a spiritual gift that each one of us can use, not only where our bank account and our finances are concerned, but also where the other facets of our lives are concerned, in vibrant good health, in loving and compassionate relationships, in the creativity that you bring to your work or to your leisure. It's all about being fully expressed in this life, which is what each of us has come here to do. So, using the science of mind is what we do in religious science. There's such a compendium of additional work that you can find that which speaks to you, which may be written a little differently or expressed a little differently, but you look for the truth. And the truth shows up in every spiritual and philosophical teaching. That thread of truth is always there. And the basis of that is to be able to be fully expressive at nobody else's expense. That's the elastic clause, if you will, at no one else's expense. And when you begin to apply that doesn't sound like much. Initially you hear that and it sounds like a very narrow, framed idea. But when you really think about it, you meditate on that, what does that mean? It changes your life. And it changes the life of those around you as well. So, living your principles, whatever they are, is not just a given. It's a decision that each one of us makes individually to live our principles, our philosophy, our purpose. And the ability to make that decision at the very outset is in and of itself a spiritual gift. But it's never withheld. It's always available for any of us who stand up and say, that's for me. That's what I do. So when you hear us talk about our standing in the light, this is my intention. That's part of it. This is my spiritual practice. That's part of it. And this is the demonstration, the outcome, the real-time unfolding. That's part of it. So let me share with you today some principles by which each of us can choose to live, whether it's within the parameters of the science of mind, which is our philosophy, or any other philosophy that supports you at no one else's expense. The first principle is to be here now. Now that just sounds silly, doesn't it? Of course, where else would I be but here now? And we are much better at being here now physically than we are mentally spiritually sometimes. We have a tendency to kind of wander off point sometimes as far as our spiritual practice is concerned, as far as our relationships with others are concerned, as far as how we care for this marvelous machine we call our body, maybe even sometimes with our thought processes and emotions. So be here now. Every one of you knows that the only moment there is the now moment. The past is done. The future isn't here. Tomorrow never comes. So consequently, we are always in the now moment. And that's not a bad thing, folks. That's a really good thing. To be in the now moment and to recognize I am fully present in this now moment. So be here now. The second principle, which is also incredibly easy to follow, is to embrace the presence. That's NCE, presence. The presence of that creative power that flows within, around, and through all of us. All of us. Even those we sometimes wonder about. You know, they may be wondering about us at the same time. But the presence of that creative energy, that divine intelligence, flows within all of us, all of the time, even when we're not embracing it. However, when we embrace it, the lift that gives us, the sense of connection that gives us is so recognizable that it's something that we want to continue with. The third thing is to know divine guidance. How often I get asked, how do you know whether it's intuition or ego? And the answer to that is, you know. In your heart, you know. Because with ego, there's always a payoff. And with intuition, it's just so easy. Now, if you have not been one who follows your, quote, intuition up until now, it may take a little training. You may need to try it a time or two. It's kind of like you may need training wheels on the bike for a while until you see some things happening in your life as a result of paying attention to your intuition, the knowing. I just know this is the right thing to do. Have you ever experienced that? I just know this is the right thing to do. And the flip side of that is, I'm not so sure whether this is the right thing to do or not. Well, you can always do it, and if it's not, undo it. Holmes says, whatever you can think, you can unthink. So consequently, test it. Even when you find yourself a little doubtful. Some of us are a little hesitant to let it be our intuition. Why do you suppose that is? Because the flip side of that is the ego that says, nah, you got to listen to me. If it's to be done, I have to do it myself. And we all learn through the years that sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes, I wish I'd listened to my intuition. So know divine guidance. Be discerning. As you do your spiritual work and you develop more and more of a communion, a connection with your source of being, it gets easier and easier to know divine guidance. And divine guidance comes through intuition. And the next, this is number 4, of principles to live by, is to speak the word. Speak your word. Know that your word as truth is your truth. It may not be everybody's truth, but it's your truth. So when you speak your word, if you don't like what you're hearing, that's a good time to go into affirmative prayer to determine what is my word? What is my truth? is my purpose? And ask that question. You don't have to answer it. Spirit will. In a variety of ways. So you pose that question. What is it I need to know? And then listen. Because it's what I call the intuitive flash. I guarantee you, you will begin to get some thoughts. Perhaps they're new, perhaps they're not. But if they're persistent, pay attention. Pay attention. The next principle of this philosophy is to trust the law. We're having some really interesting conversations, both in our outreach program up in Waimea on Tuesdays and in our class as well about the law. I am not talking about Hawaii 5-0. I'm talking about the natural laws of the universe, which we learn over our lifetime are what Dr. Holmes calls immutable. That is, they don't change. The law of electricity will either give you light or shock you, depending on how you use it. The law of gravity will hold you on the earth or will throw you off the side of a mountain if you decide to jump and there's nothing beneath you for some distance. These natural laws are not discriminatory. They are what they are. There are spiritual laws that are the same way. They are what they are. So when we try to run counter with those spiritual laws, we find that things are not working so well. When I say it's done unto you as you believe, that's a spiritual law. So whether you believe in a positive way or you believe in a negative way, that's what you get. Henry Ford said it the best and the shortest. If you think you can or you can't, you're right. Dr. Holmes on page 52 of the Science of Mind text says it as well. And we read that in January every year just to remind ourselves of when you think it's not working, it's really working by appearing to not work. And if that is confusing to you, read page 52 of the Science of Mind text. And he explains what he means by that. It's done unto you as you believe. You hear this same phrasing throughout the philosophies and the religions of the world, down through history. Why buck 'em? You know, it's so much easier to go with the flow, isn't it? And to know that there are certain immutable laws. So I look for those spiritual laws that support me. I put my word into mind, capital M, and it comes back to me. Pressed down, multiplied, amplified, and magnified. That's how it works. It's not going to change for me. It's not going to change for you. Because if it changed for me, what about the other 7 billion people on the planet who may have a completely different idea? 7 billion. That may be what we are looking at when we look at seeming chaos socially, politically, even religiously. Recognizing that truth is truth, you put it out there, it comes back. So if you don't like what's coming back, try again. Clarify. Look at your intention. Try again. Whatever you think, you can unthink. So if it's not manifesting for you, 2 things. Do an affirmative prayer for clarity. You heard that discussed here in the Standing in the Light. Do a treatment for clarity, and then wait for that clarity to present itself. Or go to a licensed practitioner and have them speak the truth of you that they know. So that's the support. All of our ministers are practitioners, and then there is this additional layer of licensed practitioners whose sole intention is to provide that support. And then here's the sixth principle to live by, a spiritual gift, and that's celebrate the fruit of your labor in joy. You heard that also in Standing in the Light. I put my word out there to travel luxuriously, enjoy it, go and see new things. That's celebrating the fruits. Yes, each one of us has a purpose here in this plane of existence. And when those kind of thoughts come to you in a positive, life-affirming way, it's a part of your purpose that broadens and deepens as you begin to live that life you came here to live. And the enjoyment of it magnifies in the process. So now I want to take these principles that I've been talking about, I want to apply them to prosperity, which is what our topic has been, not only this week, but for the last 2 months. Because I believe that we have come here to this good planet Earth to be whole, healthy, joyous, loving, and prosperous. I believe that we have come to be in this place, not just to be in this place, to be in this place, to be who we can truly be. That's not to be as a rock is. If you were meant to be a rock, you'd be a rock. Not to be as the lovely creatures of the forest and of the stream. That's their purpose. What's yours? We're meant to be something, to be someone, to be in this place of beauty and allow who we are to be a part of that beauty. And if it's not beautiful for you yet, change that. I am a beautiful and worthwhile person. That's a short affirmation. You could say that so many times a day. After a while, you start to believe it. Holmes said, act as if it is, and it will be. I am a beautiful, prosperous person. Look in the mirror. Not you are, I am a beautiful, prosperous, or whatever words you want to use. What is your intention for yourself? What's the highest and best that you can imagine for yourself? And begin to put that out there. Not I want to be, I hope to be, I will be. I am. I am. And you can only be in the present moment. I am. You may feel somewhat uncomfortable with what I'm about to say, but you are the eye of God, observing and experiencing at this level of consciousness. God by means of you, God by means of me. We are each created in the image and likeness of God. That's not a physical thing, obviously. But that is at the core of our being. We are created in the image and likeness of the Creator. And it creates at varying levels for varying purposes and reasons. It's all part of the greater whole. And this is the part that you and I have come to fulfill. Thinking, expressing at this level of consciousness. Say that when you talk to yourself. I am the mind of God, thinking and expressing at this level of consciousness. Say that when you talk to yourself. I have to tell you, I heard a story that one of our ministers told at one of our conferences some years back that I think you'll like. He said that his church had a used book sale. Well, don't we all? And the people in their congregation brought their used books or new books, some of them New Thought, others metaphysical, to donate for the sale. And he said he was on his way home and he walked by one of the tables. And on it he noticed this little book on one corner of the table. He said he walked past it and then he did one of those, double take kind of things and looked at it again and backed up and went back and picked it up. The title of the book was, What to Say When You Talk to Yourself. What to say when you talk to yourself. Of course, nobody here talks to themselves except me, I'm sure. But what do you say when you talk to yourself? Well, needless to say, he bought it. And he took it home, and he read through it, and he said, my gosh, there really is a book called What to Say When You Talk to Yourself. There actually is. I went online, and sure enough, you can buy that book. You can download it on a Kindle if you have it. What to say when you talk to yourself. So my intention this morning is to give you some good ideas about what to say when you talk to yourself. I want to share a couple of things, though, from online first, before I do that. And these are responses to having read the book. After examining the philosophies, the theories, and the practiced methods of influencing human behavior, I was shocked to learn the simplicity of that one small fact. You will become what you think about most. Your success or your failure in anything large or small will depend on your programming, what you accept from others, and what you say when you talk to yourself. Isn't that interesting? So let me give you some ideas on what you can say when you talk to yourself. And they are the ones that I already discussed, that list that I gave you. Be here now. When you talk to yourself, remind yourself to stay in the present. Embrace the presence, E-N-C-E. Bring spirit into every thought and into every action. Know divine guidance. Remember that your faculties, as Emerson said, are the result of your intuition. So don't forget what's guiding your intuition. Speak the word. Step up. Speak what you're living. When you talk to yourself, speak up, talk to yourself. Remember, if you don't like what you're hearing about what's happening in your life, you have the power to change it. When you talk to yourself. Trust the law. Ask yourself when you talk to yourself, what is the law? The law is what you think about comes about. Oh, that's right. I heard that somewhere. I must remind myself what I think about comes about. Celebrate the fruit. When you talk to yourself, remind yourself what a good job you're doing. Look how far I've come. Not since 20 minutes ago. How about 6 months or a year? Recognize that what you're doing is having an effect on what you want in your life and who you're becoming when you talk to yourself. Honor that. Here's something you can say when you talk to yourself. Atta girl, atta boy. I honor that. I praise myself. I raise myself in the name of God, in the name of love. And finally, do the next thing. What to say when you talk to yourself? Smart is when you believe half of what you hear. Brilliant is when you know which half. So trust yourself that you know what to believe and can believe it and can live it. Remind yourself of that. I can live this when you talk to yourself. And trust yourself when you talk to yourself. I trust myself to move in the direction of my dreams. So if there's one unsettling thing about living the science of mind or metaphysics in the broader sense, it's that once you start doing it, you have to keep doing it. Oliver Wendell Holmes said, "A mind stretched to a new dimension never returns to its former dimension." So do the next thing. Move on to the next level. Reach for the next star when you talk to yourself. So, although this is our last series on prosperity, it certainly isn't the end of our attention to abundance and supply in our lives. Instead, it's time for us to rededicate ourselves to growing rich by the use of our faculties, by the union of our thoughts with nature. So here's some affirmations for you to remind yourself that you are successful, that you are already vibrantly alive in this moment, that you are a co-creator with God in your life, and that God expresses its limitless abundance and prosperity through you when you talk to yourself. So I'm going to read these affirmations, and then I'll suggest that you go to YouTube in a couple of weeks for today's date, which is October 29, and all of these will be listed in this talk on that YouTube, and you can pluck them off and use them at your convenience. The first is, I am a unique, beautiful creation of God. My life unfolds in perfect right order. I am an individualized expression of God's magnificence. My life is wondrous. My life is filled with joy, love, and meaning. I am rich with spiritual gifts. I accept these gifts with gratitude. And so it is.
And so it is.